You are listening to Directions from a Spiritual Tour Guide podcast. I am your host, Chanel Scott. I'm a psychic medium and energy healer who has been supporting those on a spiritual journey for over a decade. I'm your tour guide into the world of the unknown, showing you that the magic of the universe is at your fingertips. I believe spirituality is simple and fun, and this podcast will make it easily accessible, giving you the real talk on all things divine and spiritual, helping you to step into the flow. Manifesting your dreams because we all deserve to be living our best life. Are you ready for an adventure? Hello, sunshines, and welcome to another episode of Directions from Spiritual Tour Guide podcast. My name is Chanel. I am your host and your spiritual tour guide on this journey called life. This week's episode came from pulling cards for myself, and the message that came with one of the cards really hit home. And it said, shamanic lore explains that the finest treasures of humanity are hidden where people are most afraid to go. And I was like, oh yeah. It is very evident in society that if there is the option to feel or not feel, we choose not to feel. And this is beyond feelings. The invention of the epidural is, yes, it makes childbirth way better for most, not all. And it gives this option of less or no pain, but is part of the experience feeling the pain because it's telling you something about your body. I've given birth both ways, once with an epidural, and it was an absolute nightmare. In fact, the doctor that did the delivery was suspended from my delivery. So, that's not what made it awkward. With the epidural, I couldn't feel things. I couldn't push in the same way. I couldn't feel my legs in the same way. It was just not as productive a labor as the two that I did without an epidural. And there is no judgment here on epidural, no epidural, C-section, like no judgment whatsoever. But isn't it just interesting that there's always this plan of how do we, reduce the pain or diminish the pain or not have any pain at all. But the sad part is, and it has nothing to do with childbirth, is that we often do this in life. We don't want to feel the pain of our emotions. We don't want to feel the extremes of our emotions. But the reality is everything we feel is there to tell us something. It is telling us about something that is happening in our body and in our soul that needs to be addressed. And it can be simple. It can be like pure joy and laughter. And it's our soul saying, this is fantastic. I want more. It can be the tears we have when, we've experienced loss. That is our soul telling us that there is a hole, that there is love for this person that we can't share in the same way anymore. But often when it comes to the pieces of being uncomfortable in our feelings, we try to avoid it. We shove it down. We medicate or self-medicate to avoid it. And ultimately we ignore instead of actually deal with the situation. And this causes so many problems in life. And I get it, right? Like, who wants to be uncomfortable? It's not a great experience, but it is an experience that tells you something. Allowing the feelings and emotions to come up helps you to understand how you are perceiving the situation. it's interesting. You hear of the breakup and somebody's sobbing for weeks and they're brokenhearted. So obviously that relationship meant a lot to that person, and they're grieving the loss of that relationship. But also, it could also be acknowledging the problems with that relationship and the healing that needs to be done to be able to move into a next relationship. That's the ideal part, right? Is that we take the lessons and we move forward with them and we understand why things didn't work. The other side of that is sometimes there's people that have a breakup and they're like, oh my God, that so needed to happen. And there's not the same feelings and emotions. We're expected to have these big emotions in a breakup, but sometimes it's just friggin' relief that it's over. And that might not be a big emotion. It might be a lack of emotion, but that also tells us something. That relationship had come to an end. It needed to be done. It needed to be left. There is so much information to be had. I love doing EFT healing work. For me, it's been a really powerful experience to get to the bottom of some things and to work through the healing journey of those. I often find the EFT kind of takes me to the problem, and then I'm able to kind of do the work inside to kind of get to the solution or the healing piece of it. But it's interesting because, again, you have to allow the feelings and emotions to come up, sensations, to make it work. When we can acknowledge how it shows up in our body or how that felt, then it will speak to the truth of that, phrase or sentence or, situation. I always find it interesting too, like it'll be like, where is that showing up in your body? And you're like, oh, my newest one's this throat breathing thing. And I kind of knew where it was coming from, but then I did EFT and it took it to the next level. And it was like, oh, that's where it's coming from. Okay, I can deal with that. I can heal that because I have awareness of what that thing is. When we allow ourselves to feel, when we allow ourselves to understand and know, be present in, it gives us information that we need for next steps. Now, I am a huge advocate for therapy and mental health. I will tell clients day in and day out, go get a therapist. It is the greatest thing you will ever do for yourself. So sometimes it takes a trained professional. I work with somebody with EFT that is a trained practitioner that has a lot of experience offering this service. You may go to a life coach. You may go to a Reiki master. You may go to a shamanic healer. Like, there's so many options out there depending on what you feel your issue is and how you want to address it. But when we get to that piece, when we actually allow ourselves to go to the places that we don't want to go, we find the greatest treasure. I've had a good year and a half of deep healing. Really, really getting to the bottom of so many of the things that have been blocking me and holding me back on my journey. And it has been incredibly uncomfortable. But every time I address the discomfort, it gets easier. And when I address the discomfort, it tends to go away instead of just be this ignored, pushed down thing that just keeps trying to come up and trying to come up and trying to come up. And then the beautiful part about that is as you address it and start to do the healing, it'll come up and it won't have as a big of emotion attached to it. It'll have more of an awareness of like, we're not done with this yet. Like, where else can we go with this and how else can we heal this? It's a shift. But it takes us to this place that's so beautiful. I am so incredibly grateful for the feels that I've had that have taken me on this healing journey, that has allowed me to show up here in a different way and serve you better It has allowed me to be a stronger person, a more balanced person. And it has shown me time and time again that acknowledging the things that come up for me is powerful. It doesn't make me weak. It humbles me to experience the feeling or emotion. Now, sidebar is, we can't wallow in it. We can feel it, but if you are in like those crazy sobbing, can't catch my breath, snot dripping out of my nose, like that is a place where you're not necessarily healing from, but you have to regulate back down. You need to, soften into the emotion to be able to acknowledge it. But in the moment, maybe you had to have that, but it's like, that's not productive. But sometimes it's necessary. Better out than in. Always better out than in when tears come into play there. But acknowledging that, right? Acknowledging that in this moment, I am just allowing myself to feel, and it will pass. I'm not going to just keep wallowing in it. I'm not going to just I am going to experience this. I am going to feel this. And then I'm going to say, why? I'm going to say, how do I feel? Sometimes a good cry just makes you feel a whole lot better because you just kind of purged something that couldn't be inside anymore. Sometimes you have that conversation with a friend that you're just like, oh, everything needed to come out, and the weight just feels lifted because you've had a conversation, you've talked about a solution, you've done some healing work, whatever it is, and you just feel lighter, lighter, and lighter. Like I said, when I read that, I was like, yes, yes. Everything you've ever wanted is on the other side of fear. Like all those things. And again, the pain is temporary. And usually a whole lot less temporary when you contend with something than shoving it down. Because the universe doesn't appreciate that. The more we avoid and push down and ignore, the more it comes back to tap us on the shoulder. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger until we do the work, until we do the thing to change. And sometimes it takes something really big and something that just sucks to be able to go, okay, I can't be this way anymore. I have to do something to change. What's your thoughts? What's your thoughts and feelings on this one? I think there's so many people in my circle that would agree with me. Not that I need them to agree with me, but that would really also say, dealing with your stuff is so powerful. It sets you free. It's like when I teach Reiki and we talk about being honest. Remembering lies is a lot of work. It's a lot of work. So why not be honest? The troubles that we get into, when we reach out for support and help and find solutions to get ourselves out of the mess, all of a sudden life gets lighter. It gets easier. Yeah. Okay. That's my rant for the day. Feel your feels, people. Let them tell you what they need to tell you. And get help. Get a therapist. It's so good. It's so good. Go get some healing work done. Go to somebody you trust, somebody that you resonate with, somebody that feels good for you. Because that's part of the journey too. So much. Okay, my loves, thank you for being here and joining me today. New podcasts always drop on Monday evenings. Always the option to join me over on social media as well. Get those weekly readings, those daily card pulls, pick a cards, intuition tests, all sorts of fun things over there. And of course, I always share my thoughts and feelings over there as well. So grateful for you here on this journey. If you can subscribe, comment, leave a review, that's huge. If you can leave a review on the podcast, I would so appreciate it. It definitely helps a lot. yeah, thank you for being on this spiritual journey with me and allowing me to be your spiritual tour guide from my heart and soul to yours. Until the next time. Bye now.